In September 1983, I happened to be at Wembley. I was backpacking around Europe and there was an international football match. England were playing Denmark as they did on Wednesday night, and that too was a vital European Championships game. So I stood in the crowd. There was all English fans. They were still standing in those days. Amongst them, mistakenly, and as would prove very dangerously, was a smaller group of Danish fans. Now, two things happened on that day. Denmark scored the only goal of the game, which would knock England out of the competition. As soon as the game went in, a crowd descended on the small group of Danish fans and beat many of them to a very, very dangerous level before the cops were able to break it up. But much more significant on that day, there was a young man who would become one of England's greatest footballers called John Barnes, who was 19 years old and was playing his fifth game for England, but his first in front of a home crowd. And every time he got the ball, he was greeted with an absolute chorus of boos by the supporters. And that would be my introduction to what would become a common sight that night, because two other black players came on the pitch, Mark Chamberlain and Luther Blissett, and they were given the same treatment. And I watched a number of England games over many years and would see the same thing repeated. Fast forward to now, and the subject of our conversation, a very different England team, it would seem, and a very different climate in which the team are playing their games. The team kneels for Black Lives Matter, in honor of Black Lives Matter and racial justice. They're going to be giving a huge chunk of their money to the frontline health workers in England. And the team captain, Harry Kane, wore an armband in rainbow colours in solidarity with gay rights. So Gavin Grey, from 1983 to now, something fundamentally has changed. I'm sure it didn't change all at once. But is this a much more inclusive English team in a much changed environment? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, John. I think it is a much changed England team, and I think when you see some of the marvellous players and the mix of nations from which they hail, although, of course, English-born, most of them, I mean, I think you can't help but be impressed at the way they are playing together as a team and get on, and therefore, hopefully, colour and race has nothing to do with the overall ambition of the team. That said, I am very sorry to say that, as you experienced all those years ago, I'm afraid football violence among the fans is still a problem. There was a report following the match against Denmark that some Danes had been set upon. It is absolutely reprehensible. I can't begin to understand it, and I can't begin to apologize enough to other nations around the world.
News.
Experts.
Analysis.
Where things stand.
What you need to know. Drive home with John Perlman
On 702.